Ferdinand, given the economic situation in the country, the question is, could ECB not consider a zero increase, given the tough economic times that the everyday Namibian is going through?
Well, Jonas, I agree. The situation currently is quite challenging for all of us, not only at household level, but also businesses and economy. But for us as a regulator, part of our processes is to ensure that our distributors, our utilities, our electricity infrastructure remains maintained and up to standard. And Namibia is actually known for good electricity infrastructure. Now, as soon as the regulator passes the bulk electricity tariff, our distribution utilities must apply. That's according to our methodology. If they don't apply, then it means that the distribution utilities will actually not have sufficient funds to maintain the infrastructure and to operate. And when that happens, we would also be negatively affected. But on the other hand, maybe to address that subjective view of perhaps insinuating insensitivity, one would actually invite the audience out there to the 2019-2020 financial year. There, the regulator actually there was a decrease in terms of that tariff. The year thereafter, there was no increase at all. That's 2021-2022. 2021-2022, there was a nominal increase of 2.29. And then last year, there was a single-digit tariff adjustment of 7.23. And this year, again, a single-digit from a double-digit application of 8.29.
Right.
So one can say that the regulator is actually trying its level best to balance the needs of all in the supply chain.
Let's talk a little bit about the Reds. Some have this feeling that they're contributing to the high cost of electricity because they're seen as middlemen. And perhaps for historical context, the predecessor of NamPower, Swavek, from the previous administration, was somehow able to provide electricity without the middlemen. Why can't NamPower do the same? What is the role of the Reds exactly?
Well, you see, as a nation, we had a vertically integrated utility, as you just put it, that was responsible for generation, transmission, and distribution. But as we grew as an economy, players in the industry realized that there was a need to actually separate these responsibilities. And so subsequent conversations then came up with these distribution utilities that we are talking about. And their role is basically to ensure that that electricity that you would get from NamPower will have to be stepped down at the requisite voltages and then delivered to you at home. And what we then saw as a regulator in separating those responsibilities was, if you look in the areas where we have REDs, an improvement, growth, and even in the case of our three REDs, existing REDs, tremendous investment in the areas of operation. And when one looks at the infrastructure there, it's well maintained. We don't have debt.
But there are instances, for example, in the northern part of Namibia where every other week there are blackouts. And that now once again brings into question, what is the point of having a RED if every other weekend I'm not having power, if I'm running a business that requires me to have electricity? How is that issue being addressed?
It's unfortunate, I agree, because it affects households, it affects businesses. But then again, one has to address this within its context. Sometimes it would be unfair to actually just generalize and speak to that outage as if maybe there was no communication from the utility to say we are doing maintenance, hence power will be out from this period to that period. But sometimes there's also just unforeseen circumstances in the network that would actually disrupt supply. But what we are assuring our residents out there is we have an industry or market framework in place that ensures that our distribution utilities lives up to their service promise. And in this case, every time there's an outage, they try their level best to restore that outage to minimize the inconvenience.
Lastly, just briefly, Namibians are obviously worried about what's happening in neighboring South Africa, and by that I mean load shedding. Should we be concerned about that right now, or do we is our energy secure for now?
I must say we have been fortunate as Namibians to have friendly neighbors that have been very accommodating of our electricity need. But as much as these friendly neighbors have been that accommodating, we cannot take the foot off the pedal. It just simply means that we have to work hard as a nation, work for results for that matter, on our own efforts in terms of our local generation.
Right.
But just briefly, we have firm contracts in place, and our national power utility as supplier of last resort have measures in place to ensure that that inconvenience that you just described would not actually be on our doorstep, at least not in the immediate future.
All right, Ferdinand, thank you so much for shedding light on this very serious issue. But I have a feeling that we must have you on a show that you used to host in the past, one-on-one, to have an in-depth discussion about this issue. But thank you once again for your time.
Always welcome.
Highly appreciate it.